You wake up one morning and something feels different. Not different in an exciting way, but different in a way that makes your chest feel heavy. You go through the motions. You brush your teeth, you get dressed, you show up to work, you smile when you're supposed to smile, you laugh when everyone else laughs, but inside, there's this feeling, this emptiness, this sense that you're just going through the motions, that life is happening to you rather than being lived by you. And the worst part, you can't even explain it to anyone because on paper, everything looks fine. You have a job, you have people around you, you have responsibilities. But somehow, it all feels empty. And then there are those days when it's not just empty, it's overwhelming, when the to-do list feels like a mountain you'll never climb, when every email demands your attention, every person needs something from you, every problem seems urgent. You feel like you're drowning in obligations, suffocating under expectations, and running on a hamster wheel that never stops. You're exhausted, but you can't rest because there's always something else that needs to be done. Always someone else who needs something. Always another fire to put out. Here's what I want you to know right now, right at this moment. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are not alone in feeling this way. What you're experiencing is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign that something needs to change. It's your internal compass telling you that the life you're living is out of alignment with the life you're meant to live. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually the beginning of something important. Let me tell you something about human beings. We are not designed to just exist. We are designed to contribute. We are designed to feel like what we do matters. We are designed to connect with others in meaningful ways. We are designed to grow and learn and become better versions of ourselves. When we're not doing these things, when we're just going through the motions without purpose or connection or growth, our soul starts to send us signals. Emptiness is one of those signals. Overwhelm is another. They're not the enemy. They're messengers trying to tell us something important. The problem is that we live in a world that has taught us to ignore these signals. We live in a world that tells us that if we just work harder, if we just achieve more, if we just buy the right things, if we just look the right way, if we just get that promotion or that relationship or that house, then we'll feel fulfilled. Then we'll feel satisfied. Then we'll feel whole. But here's the truth that nobody wants to talk about. Achievement without purpose is just activity. Success without meaning is just status. And status doesn't fill the emptiness. It just covers it up for a little while. Think about it. How many times have you achieved something you thought you wanted, only to feel empty a few weeks later? How many times have you checked something off your list, only to feel the pressure of 10 more things that need to be done? How many times have you been surrounded by people, but felt completely alone? This is not because you're doing something wrong. This is because you've been taught to measure your worth by the wrong things. We've been taught to measure our worth by our productivity, by how busy we are, by how much we accomplish, by how full our calendar is. We wear our busyness like a badge of honor. We compete over who's more tired, who's more stressed, who's more overwhelmed. We say things like, "I'm so busy," as if it's something to be proud of. But busyness is not the same as purpose. Being overwhelmed is not the same as being fulfilled. Running fast is not the same as going somewhere that matters. And here's what happens when we live this way. We start to lose ourselves. We start to become a collection of other people's expectations. We become what our parents wanted us to be, what our boss needs us to be, what our friends expect us to be, what society tells us we should be. We optimize our lives for external validation rather than internal satisfaction. We chase goals that look good on paper but don't feel good in our hearts. And then we wonder why we feel empty. The overwhelm comes from the same place. We say yes to everything because we're afraid of disappointing people. We take on more than we can handle because we think that's what successful people do. We spread ourselves so thin that we can't do anything well, and then we beat ourselves up for not being good enough. We try to be everything to everyone, and in the process, we become nothing to ourselves. But here's what I want you to understand. The solution is not to work harder. The solution is not to push through. The solution is not to numb yourself or distract yourself or pretend everything is fine. The solution is to stop and ask yourself a fundamental question. Why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why does this matter? Why did I choose this path? Why do I get out of bed in the morning? Most people have never asked themselves this question. Not really. Not honestly. They've asked themselves what they want to achieve, or how they're going to get somewhere, or when they'll finally be successful. But they've never asked why. And without a why, without a reason that goes beyond external validation or fear or obligation, everything feels empty. Because you can have all the success in the world, but if you don't know why you're pursuing it, it means nothing. Your why is not about what you do. It's about why you do it. It's not about your job title or your salary or your accomplishments. It's about the impact you want to have. It's about the contribution you want to make. It's about who you want to be in the world and how you want to make others feel. Your why is the thing that makes you feel alive. It's the thing that makes you jump out of bed in the morning. It's the thing that makes all the hard work worth it. And here's the beautiful thing about finding your why. Once you know it, once you really connect with it, everything else starts to make sense. The emptiness starts to fade because you're doing things that matter to you. The overwhelm starts to ease because you have clarity about what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You start to make different choices. You start to say no to things that don't align with your why. You start to say yes to things that do. You stop living by default and start living by design. But finding your why is not easy. It requires you to be honest with yourself. It requires you to look at your life and admit that maybe you've been living according to someone else's definition of success. It requires you to face your fears and your insecurities and your doubts. It requires you to be vulnerable enough to admit that you don't have all the answers. And that's scary because we live in a world that values certainty and confidence and having it all figured out. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The most successful people, the most fulfilled people, the people who are actually making a difference in the world, they don't have it all figured out either. They struggle too. They feel empty sometimes. They feel overwhelmed sometimes. The difference is that they don't pretend otherwise. They don't try to push through and ignore their feelings. They listen to them. They use them as information. They let them guide them toward what needs to change. Because here's the truth. Emptiness is not the problem. Overwhelm is not the problem. These are symptoms. The problem is living a life that's out of alignment with who you really are and what you really value. The problem is sacrificing your mental health and your relationships and your peace of mind for goals that don't actually matter to you. The problem is letting fear and obligation and other people's expectations run your life. So what do you do when life feels empty and overwhelming? You start by giving yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. You stop judging yourself for not being happy all the time. You stop comparing your insides to everyone else's outsides. You acknowledge that something needs to change, and you commit to figuring out what that is. Then you start asking better questions. Not what should I do, but what do I want? Not how can I be more productive, but what actually matters to me. Not how can I please everyone, but who am I trying to be? Not what will make me successful, but what will make me fulfilled. These questions are hard. They don't have easy answers, but they're the right questions. And then you start taking small steps. Not giant leaps. Not dramatic changes that upend your entire life overnight. Small steps. You start by carving out time for yourself, just 5 minutes a day, where you sit quietly and check in with yourself. Where you ask yourself how you're really doing. Where you listen to that voice inside you that's been trying to get your attention. You start by identifying one thing in your life that drains you, one obligation that doesn't serve you, one relationship that takes more than it gives, one habit that makes you feel worse about yourself. And you start to change it. Not all at once, not perfectly, but you start. You start by doing one thing that lights you up, one thing that makes you feel alive, one thing that reminds you of who you are beneath all the roles and responsibilities and expectations. Maybe it's a hobby you gave up. Maybe it's time with a friend who really sees you. Maybe it's a walk in nature. Maybe it's creating something with your hands. Whatever it is, you make time for it. Not when you have time. You make time for it. Because if you don't prioritize what matters to you, it will never happen. You start by connecting with others, authentically. Not networking, not small talk, not pretending everything is fine. Real connection. You reach out to someone and tell them you're struggling. You ask for help. You admit that you don't have it all together. And you know what? Most people will respond with relief because they feel the same way. They're just as scared to admit it as you are. You start by redefining success on your own terms. Not your parents' terms, not society's terms, not your boss's terms. Your terms. What does success actually look like to you? Not what should it look like, what does it look like? Maybe success is having dinner with your family every night. Maybe it's having time to read. Maybe it's making a difference in one person's life. Maybe it's building something you're proud of. Maybe it's just feeling peaceful. There's no right answer. There's only your answer. And here's what I want you to know about this process. It's not linear. You're not going to wake up one day and suddenly have everything figured out. You're not going to find your why and then never feel empty or overwhelmed again. That's not how life works. Life is messy. Growth is messy. Change is messy. You're going to have good days and bad days. You're going to take steps forward and steps backward. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to want to give up. And that's okay. That's part of the process. What matters is that you keep going. What matters is that you don't give up on yourself. What matters is that you remember that you deserve a life that feels meaningful. You deserve to feel fulfilled. You deserve to wake up excited about your day. You deserve to go to bed feeling satisfied. You deserve to feel like your life matters. Not because of what you achieve or what you accomplish or what other people think of you, but because you're living in alignment with your values, because you're being true to yourself, because you're contributing in a way that feels meaningful to you. And let me tell you something else. The world needs you to figure this out. The world doesn't need more people going through the motions. The world doesn't need more people sacrificing their mental health for productivity. The world doesn't need more people pretending to be happy when they're dying inside. The world needs people who are alive, who are present, who are passionate, who are contributing from a place of genuine care rather than obligation. When you're living from your why, when you're doing work that matters to you, when you're connected to something bigger than yourself, you show up differently. You have more energy. You have more creativity. You have more patience. You have more compassion. You inspire others without even trying, because people can feel when someone is living authentically. They can sense when someone has found their purpose. And it gives them permission to do the same. Think about the people who have inspired you in your life. I bet they weren't the people who had it all together. I bet they weren't the people with the perfect lives or the biggest accomplishments. I bet they were the people who were real. The people who were vulnerable. The people who shared their struggles. The people who admitted they didn't have all the answers but were committed to figuring it out anyway. The people who chose meaning over status. The people who chose purpose over approval. The people who chose to live authentically even when it was hard. That's what the world needs from you. Not perfection, not to have it all figured out, not to never feel empty or overwhelmed. The world needs you to be real. To be honest, to be willing to look at your life and make changes when something isn't working. To be brave enough to pursue what matters to you, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. To be committed to your own growth and fulfillment, even when it's uncomfortable. Because here's what happens when you do that. You start to attract different opportunities. You start to build different relationships. You start to make different choices. You start to create a life that actually fits you rather than trying to fit yourself into a life that doesn't work. And yes, some people won't understand. Some people will think you're crazy for walking away from a stable job or a prestigious title or a comfortable situation. Some people will judge you. Some people will try to talk you out of it. But you know what? Those people are scared. They're scared that if you have the courage to change, it will force them to look at their own lives. It will force them to confront their own emptiness. It will force them to question their own choices. And that's uncomfortable. So they'll try to keep you small. They'll try to keep you safe. They'll try to convince you that you should just be grateful for what you have. But you know better. You know that gratitude and the desire for growth are not mutually exclusive. You can be grateful for where you are and still want to move forward. You can appreciate what you have and still acknowledge that something needs to change. You can love people and still set boundaries. You can be successful by society's standards and still feel empty. And when you start making changes, when you start living from your why, when you start prioritizing what actually matters to you, something magical happens. The emptiness starts to fill. Not with stuff, not with achievements, not with external validation. It fills with meaning. It fills with purpose. It fills with connection. It fills with satisfaction. It fills with the knowledge that you're living a life that's true to you. The overwhelm doesn't disappear completely. Life is still challenging. There are still hard days. There are still too many things to do and not enough time to do them, but it feels different because you're overwhelmed by things that matter to you rather than things that don't. You're pouring your energy into pursuits that align with your values rather than obligations that don't serve you. You're saying yes to opportunities that excite you and no to demands that deplete you. And here's something important to understand. This is not selfish. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. Pursuing your purpose is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not selfish. Saying no to things that don't serve you is not selfish. In fact, it's the opposite. When you're running on empty, when you're overwhelmed and depleted and disconnected from yourself, you have nothing to give to anyone else. You're just going through the motions. You're just checking boxes. You're just surviving. But when you're filled up, when you're connected to your why, when you're living with purpose and intention, you have so much more to give. You show up better for your family. You show up better for your work. You show up better for your community. You lead by example. You inspire others. You make a real difference. Not because you're trying to, not because you're forcing it, but because it flows naturally from who you are. So let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you gave yourself permission to want more? Not more stuff, not more status, not more achievement, more meaning, more purpose, more connection, more joy, more peace. What would your life look like if you designed it around what actually matters to you rather than what you think should matter? What would change if you stopped trying to meet everyone else's expectations and started meeting your own? What would be different if you stopped saying yes to things you don't want to do and started saying yes to things you do? What would happen if you stopped waiting for the perfect time and started making small changes right now? I'll tell you what would happen. You would start to feel alive again. You would start to remember who you are beneath all the roles and responsibilities. You would start to reconnect with the parts of yourself that you've been ignoring. You would start to build a life that actually fits you. And it wouldn't be perfect, it wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't happen overnight, but it would be real, it would be yours, and it would matter, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking for. We want to feel like our lives matter. We want to feel like we're making a contribution. We want to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. We want to feel like we're growing and learning and becoming better versions of ourselves. We want to feel alive. And the beautiful thing is that you don't need anyone's permission to pursue that. You don't need to wait for the right time. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start. You just need to take one small step toward the life you actually want to live. And then another. And then another. Some days will be hard. Some days you'll want to quit. Some days you'll wonder if it's worth it. And on those days, I want you to remember why you started. I want you to remember that feeling of emptiness that brought you here. I want you to remember that feeling of overwhelm that made you realize something needed to change. I want you to remember that you deserve better, that you're capable of more, that your life can be different. And I want you to remember that you're not alone. Everyone feels empty sometimes. Everyone feels overwhelmed sometimes. Everyone questions whether they're on the right path. Everyone wonders if they're doing enough. Everyone struggles with the balance between what they want and what they think they should want. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're human. And being human means feeling all the feelings. The good ones and the hard ones, the joy and the pain, the excitement and the fear, the fulfillment and the emptiness. It's all part of the experience. The goal is not to feel good all the time. The goal is to feel alive, to feel present, to feel connected, to feel like you're living your life rather than just going through the motions. So when life feels empty and overwhelming, don't run from it, don't numb it, don't pretend it's not there. Feel it, acknowledge it, let it tell you what needs to change. Let it guide you toward what matters. Let it be the catalyst for creating something better. Because you have a choice. You can keep doing what you've been doing. You can keep going through the motions. You can keep sacrificing your well-being for productivity. You can keep trying to meet everyone else's expectations. You can keep waiting for things to get better on their own. Or you can decide that enough is enough. You can decide that you deserve a life that feels meaningful. You can decide to start making changes, even small ones, even imperfect ones, that move you toward the life you actually want to live. The emptiness you feel is not a life sentence. The overwhelm you're experiencing is not permanent. These are signals that something needs to change. And the fact that you're feeling them means you're ready for something different. You're ready to stop settling. You're ready to start living. You're ready to find your why and build your life around it. It won't be easy. Change never is. But it will be worth it, because there's nothing more valuable than living a life that feels true to you. There's nothing more important than waking up excited about your day. There's nothing more fulfilling than knowing that what you do matters. Not to everyone, not to society, but to you and to the people whose lives you touch. So start today. Start right now. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what matters. Ask yourself what needs to change. And then take one small step. Just one. And tomorrow, take another. And the day after that, another. And slowly, gradually, one step at a time, you'll start to build a life that doesn't feel empty, a life that doesn't feel overwhelming, a life that feels like yours. Because that's what you deserve. That's what we all deserve. A life that matters, a life with purpose, a life that makes us feel alive. And the only person who can create that life for you is you. So start creating, start building, start living. Your why is waiting for you to find it. Your purpose is waiting for you to claim it. Your life is waiting for you to live it. What are you waiting for?